Sure.
And that's why I just mentioned the state machine. I don't even want to do a hero test if they can't do the, every state of the state machine, because then it doesn't make sense. Um, but
So,
Yeah.
Chris, in your mind, is there a subset of the issues that Christina's tracking that if they were solved, the ping would probably work? Or is it like all of them?
I haven't looked at it from that point of view. I guess I'm kind of just putting as a broad goal to this group that we ought to have some kind of a code drop that does something that we agree on, right? Just broad terms. And, hello world, hello dash, just passing even just a packet forwarding from port 1 to port 2. It seems trivial, but what it verifies is you can bring up the switch, program a table that says, wildcard forward packet from port 1 to port 2, change the port number, right? It's just the most basic forwarding test. And that way, once you have that, you say, okay, I've got a complete tool chain that I can compile, build, and run the most trivial test. That's like step one.
And probably one way to get there quickly would be if there's any group-based policy classification, it should be a default permit all on the first test.
Yeah, or even just, that's an example. So, and then going forward, we'll want to probably agree on a few other things. But at some point, once we start putting these tests and baking them in, I think there's an implied understanding that if someone breaks something, they have to fix it and or the test, right? That there's sort of we had this talk yesterday, philosophical, right? So I just want to start that conversation and maybe people think about it. But at some point we just have to say, okay, we're agreeing on a code drop. At this version, it can do X. Then the next version will do Y. And we have to start building the testing infrastructure to do that. So maybe it's just an item on the tasks.
Yeah.
I'm looking into how we can get a Thrift server attached to this, because we need a volunteer to do that as well.
Michael, you have your hand up. Michael?
Michael, do you have your hand up?
Maybe he accidentally did that, but he's off mute now. So he accidentally put his hand up and went off mute.
Okay.
But we
So
don't hear you, Michael.
Venkat put something in the chat window. He said he can't speak, but we can use Mininet to provide the port packet abstractions. This is how P4 behavioral model is tested.
Yeah. That's a little bit of that's answering a different problem, almost like the topology and wiring problem. And that's not the problem as much as we need the data plane itself, verified, and we're going to hook it up to these packet testers, like I described in the meeting yesterday and been talking about for some time. So what we want is an automation pipeline, not necessarily Mininet. That may be good for development, and that's not a bad idea for development. So anyway, I guess Bud had a nice comment here. Simple UDP inbound packet, no ACL config. And with no ACL config, Bud, would you, I know your audio is bad, would you say then that it should come back out the same port? Is that the default routing? Something like that? Maybe I'll try to take a look at the current state of things, but does the group agree that this is, an important thing to start working on, start actually having tests as we go along and, incrementally verify? And I wish Marian were here, because I would like to ask his advice. What's the easiest way to configure thanks, Bud, configure the data plane, configure the P4 tables, at this point in time, in lieu of a Thrift server? She would just write some bespoke C code to do it. Maybe we can just post this, and if we have, I don't know if we're gonna have minutes or not, or maybe you can look at the recording.
Right. I would vote that yes. I think it's a good idea. because then we would be taking a step forward. If I knew how to program in C, I would do it myself. But I think that would be a good first step forward. How about anyone else?
Has anyone else considered that, you know, playing with the simulator and trying to pass packets through it, or are we just basically writing code, you know, and talking about it? Has anyone actually tried to run the simulator besides myself? So,
And you mean the simulator with enhancements that have been that are needed for Dash features, not just the open source one?
correct. I mean, there's a whole README in the Sirius pipeline folder that, you know, if you run all these steps, it does a very simple unit test, builds everything and runs a unit test, and the unit test does one trivial table config, but it doesn't send any packets.
And I haven't tried to do what you're doing. The directions point at like a forked version of the behavioral model code with some enhancements and changes, not the original master version.
That's my understanding. Yes.
Yep.
So we probably, without Marian in this call, we probably need to kind of defer this issue till the next meeting. So we have make sure that all the information's on the table. But I just wanted to get the conversation started.
Thanks, Chris. That's great. Yeah. I can give time back then, since we don't have the quote unquote leader of the group. So I'll post the recording, though. It'll post what we did talk about.
Okay.
And see, there's one more person in the lobby. Just want to make sure. Okay. All right. Well, guys. Oh, looks like it's John Carney. Okay. So, John, you may have just joined and we're just finishing. We don't have Marian today. We were talking about possibly creating a very simple hello world test, and would that be a good idea, just to see if we could get the packet to cross the pipeline, if I'm paraphrasing that correctly, Chris?
Yeah.
And whether that would be a good idea. But since Marian isn't here today, we were going to end the call.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you think that's a good idea, John? I guess I'll just ask
It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
It sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea to me, guys.
Okay, good.
I don't
Right.
think we need Marion here to make that decision. You should just do that.
Right. Well, just also wanted to get his thoughts on the best way to go about it, and you know, if there's any volunteers. But I'll try to study the issue some more.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your time. Appreciate it. And I'll try and sync with Marian on the back end about this, maybe with Yumi and Chris or something.
Super. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you everyone for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.